crap. It pops out. And it's supposed to pop out. But I can't get the bulb to go out.
Oh, it's a Jeep. They always sound like they're breaking down.
Well, if it's making a noise, then you probably should go and get it checked out rather than just not ignore the problem. And then when you have to go somewhere, it ends up giving you problems. You know what I mean? See all that rust? I mean, this is still solid. So it's not rusting through. Oh, that sounds like the rust could get to that. That's your drive shaft. Ow. Here's your but anyway, I think that this is where these bolts connect to. Looks like it's still solid. Ow. I mean, all this seems pretty solid, but I mean, it's more so that hinge than the actual thing. It's rusted. I don't want to touch that. See how that's rusted? I don't want to touch it because it might break on you. Let's see where else. Let's see. I think I see something under there. Alright. So this is what it looks like underneath here. Let's see. Is this rotted? No. How about this? Ooh. Uh-oh. That sounds like that's... Looks like it's rusted. Oh, crap. Alright. Yeah. I don't want to touch it. I mean, you can touch it, you can hear it crumbling. I mean, that's where the suspension attaches to. I mean, I don't want to touch it and get rust all over the place, but look at that. And it attaches for your shock. And it's rusted. I mean, I don't want to touch any of that stuff that looks like it's going to break. There's the rotor. That looks like that's going to need replacing. All that. But it looks like it's going to be frame rotting. Look at that. I mean, it. far as I can tell. Alright, so that right there looks to be the starter. Right about here is where that engine leak is. But look at that. You know, I don't want to touch where it's rusting because it's all just going to come crumbling, but I mean, if it's surface rust, that can be fixed, but if it's completely rotted through, it can't be fixed. You have to replace it. Like you see all that, caliper, all that needs to be replaced. Because that side got replaced because it broke down, almost did. I don't know what the deal is, but they really should have replaced this. But I'm guessing that there's other rust in some other areas. I mean, here's the oil pan for when they do oil changes, but this is where the oil leak was initially coming out of. They supposedly replaced it when, you know, the oil pan right there. They replaced it. This is what the underside of the engine looks like. And as you can see, oh man. But yeah, it's nothing but leaks. A leak. And then up there, that's where the flare is rusted out. But I can't see anything else. I mean, that's pretty bad, but I can't tell if that's attached, what that's attached to. I don't know if that can be replaced or not, but yeah. So this is a tire rod that they owned that they left. As you can see, it's completely rusted. Yep, you don't want to put that in there. But yeah, look at all that rust. It's broken. It's just insane. And I took this out. You can see. I don't want to. Man, look at it's there. So this is where the rust is on that. Now, this is still secure, so it's not going to go anywhere, but if you move it, it moves a little bit. But I don't see anything else that would be an issue. On the stretcher. See that pops out? And it's supposed to pop out, but I can't get the bulb to go out. So So if you take a look at that, you can tell that there's even rust on the parking brake. Now, I don't think that would need to be replaced, but the parking brake works fine. But yeah. Ain't that great? Let me turn this off. I mean, it's fine. Everything seems to be fine with it. Alrighty. Okay, so back here, we're going to test our seatbelts to make sure that they work properly. They click. Okay, so that one clicked. About the middle one here. Let me switch around. Here, let me sit here and try to put the seatbelt on. Let's see. Well, it's not real fitting that well. It's kind of real cramped, you know. The seatbelt thingy is actually right here instead of on the edge. So it's kind of cramped. But it works. But I don't know why it's like that though. Then you got the one on the right. That one obviously works because I rode in the back of this. First day I had this. Because yeah. Rode in the back of this. First day I got it, so I know this belt works. But yeah, as far as I can tell, I mean the interior is in pretty good shape, considering the outside. But yeah, I might have to go inside and talk because it's a little hot. But you know, you got everything in here seems to be working just fine, as far as I can tell. But might have to go inside and talk. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't see any other rust areas. I know these hinges are going to have to get checked up on. Can't use WD-40 because that'll just rust it out even more. But yeah. Uh-oh, we got bugs. Alright, let's hope that didn't work the battery too much. let's go inside and I'll talk about it in a minute. The reasons why those Jeeps, those used Jeeps, are overpriced is because of what we just went and looked at. So, as you may have known from those clips, there is a bit of rust, underneath. And, a lot, they said it's surface rust and stuff like that. Well, if you can fix that, then fix it. You know what I mean? If it can't be fixed, then you're gonna have to, not get it fixed. Because when a car has rust damage like that on its frame and stuff like that, that stuff usually can't be replaced. The only way that it could be replaced is if you went and took it to a body shop and had them, do all the repairs and stuff like that. But yeah, that's ultimately what happens with cars that are older. They end up rusting out and they end up at the junkyard because you can't get past an inspection, and the person that owns it doesn't want to or can't put in the money to have it repaired. So they would usually end up selling it to a junkyard or selling it to somebody who can very much do the repairs that they need. And that's exactly what happened with my old vehicle. My old vehicle was an old Plymouth Voyager. It was in some pretty rough shape. And, it wouldn't pass for an inspection. And it had a huge list of things that was wrong with it. So ultimately, what ended up happening was it had to be, we ended up not being able to register it because I had lived in another state and they registered it in that state with historic tags. Well, then we moved back to another state, and in order for you to get vintage plates or antique plates, you still have to put it through an enhanced inspection because it had a rebuilt title and all of that stuff. So that's what ended up happening. And we couldn't get it registered. So the person that had the van before I did, they ended up taking the van back and they ended up selling it for $200 because the person that was going to have to buy it was going to have to put more than what the value is into it. Now, I don't know what happened to the van. I don't know if they're fixing it up or what, but this is ultimately what happens to cars that are older and they can't be repaired. They end up having to be driven on private property only because of the cost. But the reasons why I say that those used Jeeps are not worth what you pay for is because of all the problems they give you. You got engine problems, rust problems, things of that nature, and you have to put in more money than what it would initially be worth for it. Like, you see those old Jeeps, they're like 2011 or newer. They want like almost $20,000 for them. And it's like, that's not worth $20,000 because you got rust showing up. You possibly have transmission problems. You possibly have engine problems that are going to cost a lot of money to fix. Replacing spark plugs and what's needed is what's needed. Alternators, starters, all that kind of stuff. But like things that are like more expensive, like, I had to replace the oil pan, and it costed like $900 and some just for the oil pan. and the engine's still leaking oil in different locations a little bit. You know what I mean? There's just a lot of things that, you know, needs to be fixed on it. And since I found out that the bracket for the fender flare, it's completely rusted out. And that goes with the body, it looks like. Now, I don't know if that's the case because I don't have the tools to be able to look. But from what I've seen on videos and stuff like that, it looks like it is attached to the body, and that can't be fixed unless you take it to a body shop, and they'd have to completely replace it. You know, it's not something that you can just repair because it's completely rusted through. Now, I checked everything else, and wherever it looks like there's rust, surface rust, you know, it's breaking off, I mean, that's one thing. But if it's completely rusted through, then that's where you'd have to go and, you know, figure out if it's going to cause you to fail an inspection. You know what I mean? So that's the whole reason why I think that they're way overpriced. Because when I bought mine, I paid $10,000 and $500 for mine. You know, and it had 106 miles at the time, and it only went up to 107 over the last year. And, you know, most people, when they buy used Jeeps like that, they want to lowball you $7,000 or $8,000 because, you know, it's old. It's not in the best of condition. You're going to have to put more money into it than what's worth. You know, I mean, if your car is going to likely end up in the direction of the junkyard, you just better just keep it and run it till it ends up going to the junkyard. Now, I don't know the situation with who owned it previously, right? But it was pretty wore out with some of the parts that are on there. You know, I don't know if it's been sitting for 10 years or whatever, but that kind of rust doesn't just show up in a year. That rust shows up after years and years and years and years of, you know, of it sitting and all kinds of stuff. So if you have a used Jeep like that and it's not rusted, you best make sure that you check it and you take care of it so it doesn't end up like mine. Otherwise, it's going to end up having to go to a shop, body shop, to get fixed. And, you know, even if it is fixable, you know, it's better to fix what's wrong with it now than to wait until you have to get it inspected or you move states and have to go through an enhanced inspection. You know, I mean, that's kind of the thing, you know, but that kind of stuff's important that needs to be replaced. You know, I mean, we've had used Jeeps in the past and people wanted to lowball because of those things, you know. You know, they want to offer $8,000 for it, but, you know, because it's in some pretty rough condition, you know. Because you have to spend all the money to fix it all up. So, yeah. So I really do think that they're overpriced. I really do. I think that they should be $10,000 less than what the owner is selling it for. You know, especially if it has over 100,000 miles. Especially. Because once it hits that 100,000 mile mark, that's when you're usually going to start having problems. And I went and told my mom all this, and she's like,
Oh, it's a Jeep. They always sound like they're breaking down.
well, if it's making a noise, then you probably should go and get it checked out rather than just not ignore the problem. And then when you have to go somewhere, it ends up giving you problems. You know what I mean? You guys know on this channel, I thought the air conditioner was making noise, and then something else was going on with it. Oh yeah, the loud noise. And then you heard other things going on with it. I had battery issues and all kinds of things. It's just left to right, issue after issue. I had to get the tires replaced because they were dry rotted over a year ago. I went and got inspected, said it needed replaced, so I went and done that. And it's just, completely rusted out. And here's the thing. If you're not going to run a car and you're going to have it sit for 10 years, put it in a garage or put a cover over it. Don't let it sit out in the open and let it sit, because that's what's going to happen. When a car sits, it's going to go bad pretty darn quick, So that's why it's important to get that stuff repaired before it happens, But yeah, it's, if you got a used 2011 Jeep or 12 or whatever, and you're selling it and it has 150,000 miles, be it you're asking $20,000 or $18,000 or $15,000 or anything of that nature, it's kind of overpriced. If you are going to sell it, you might as well put the money into it, put on aftermarket stuff, and then sell it for that price. Because when you buy them used Jeeps, most people, they put bigger tires, bigger flares, fender flares, aftermarket stuff. That stuff costs more money. It ain't worth putting all the aftermarket stuff if your frame is rotted out or rusted out. Because within a couple years, it may not pass inspection. And then it may not be able to be replaced. And then you have to send it over to the junkyard or find some rich person who can put $25,000 into it to get it rebuilt. You know what I mean? But that's just, that's just how it is. But, this is why it's important to keep up with this stuff so it doesn't end up in that situation. You know what I mean? But yeah, I have to say, it is what it is, But, it's just if it becomes too much to fix, then that's where it becomes the problem. Like with the van. The van had way too much to fix. You have to be smart. If the initial vehicle is not going to be able to be fixed because it's rusted out or whatever, then don't do anything extra to it. Don't tint the windows. Don't put in headliners and stuff like that. If it's not going to be running for the next 10 years, then don't do all that stuff. You know what I mean? Because it's just going to end up wasting all that money, So yeah, so that's that. But it is what it is. All right, people. I'll see you in another video.